My name's Alex Bramwell. I was born here and lived here. I do the Canary Islands social media, Facebook and Twitter pages in English for the tourist industry. And I also do blogging and journalism. I'm a photographer as well. And I just wanted to, we've been talking a lot about the sort of the rig repair and stuff, which I think there is not as much information out. I didn't know about it as much as I should have. Most of the public attitude here is focused on the extraction, and I'm not convinced that they're not that the public have those as separate things yet. So I was going to just a few facts about the oil situation between here and Morocco. Between 900 and 2.3 billion barrels are the estimates of what might be down there. That could be 150,000 barrels extracted a day. We're not really, even if the higher estimate comes up, we're not really talking a Norway or a Kuwait situation. You're talking 10% of Spain's internal use of oil every year. So it's quite a small field, even if they do really well, they find it all. There's a 20% chance, even now that they're starting to explore, there's a 20% chance they'll find oil down there, which is the minimum that they'll actually put money in. KN Energy explored its first section and didn't find anything. So they're now capping their exploratory wells. They're moving on to the next one, which is right opposite the ones just off Fuerteventura that are in Canarian and Spanish waters. So we will know, hopefully, within a year or so, if they start finding oil, then it'll be our side of the line as well. Repsol's planning to invest 9 billion euros in 1 year of exploration. So these are the basic facts. And of course, the problem with the Canary Islands is that we've already got an oil industry. Norway, as you say, everything in Norway is about oil, the whole, the top of the pyramid. We've already got one of them, which is tourism. It employs almost everyone here. The second biggest industry in Norway, as you said, is salmon. The second biggest industry here is probably growing tomatoes. It's not a big thing. So tourism is the huge behemoth that keeps the Canary Islands going right now. And you've got three main problems with oil extraction, this is, of course. The one is that the Canary Islands they're quite an interesting place. If you talk to a biologist, they'll tell you there's 600 species of plants you only get here, 13 reptiles, and there's actually between 30 and 35 species of whales and dolphins recorded in the Canary Islands. That's more than anywhere else on Earth. This is biodiversity hotspot for whales and dolphins, which is, of course, the one thing that will suffer if extraction goes wrong and there is a spill, and it's one of the big public problems here. Whales, dolphins, it's like kicking flipper, you don't want to do it. You really want to keep them. So, the nightmare scenario here is, of course, Gulf of Mexico situation, where a well goes wrong. Gulf of Mexico, I'm not sure on the depth, but here we're talking between 800 and 1,650 metres of water between the surface and another 2,000 metres of rock. What would happen, this is what really scares the tourism people, what happens if something goes wrong in 1,500 metres of water and a well starts to leak like it did in the Gulf of Mexico? The way the ocean currents work, the cold Canary Current flows down, any oil that comes out will end up on our coast. And the Canary Islands sell themselves by having pristine beaches, beautiful coastlines. If it went wrong, what would happen? Tourism bookings would go down, people would lose their jobs, flight companies would cut back, and the whole motor that keeps the Canary Islands running at the moment would just disappear. So the big question we've got in the Canary Islands is it worth doing? Is extraction worth the risks? And of course the energy minister says, yes, absolutely. And the local government say, no, absolutely not. We can't take this risk. And the second problem with this, of course, is you have an issue about who benefits if they do find an oil strike. Obviously Spain imports, 90-something% of all its oil that it uses for everything is imported. Its balance of payments, energy-wise, are terrible. It would be more than happy to find oil and extract oil down here, whatever happens, because for the country, it's a great thing. But for the Canary Islands, it's a Repsol, it's not going to be based here, it's going to be based in mainland Spain. Presumably a lot of the workers are not going to be Canarian because at the moment there's no oil industry experience here. So most of the workers will presumably either be international or they will be Spanish and they will come down from the mainland. They'll be based on rigs, they may be based on shore to a certain extent, and they definitely will spend money, but most of their salaries will be taken back to mainland Spain. So they will come here, they will spend some of their salaries, they will push up the price of everything, from housing for Canarians, which is already, after the boom year, now it's quite high. So the Canary Islands have this idea in their head that that there's no benefits to extraction for the Canary Islands. And that, I think, for the extraction is the biggest problem that the oil industry has. It's trying to explain to people here how does this benefit us, the extraction. And at the moment, they're not doing a very good job. 62% of Canarians are completely opposed to extraction. If you go to Lanzarote and Fuerteventura, where would be the islands that are most affected by extraction, 77% of people in Lanzarote are completely opposed to extraction. So that's pretty much what the scenario is here. You have a situation where it's a sort of macroeconomic benefit to Spain. When you start to look at the Canary Islands themselves, it's not. It doesn't. I don't see it as adding up to the Canary Islands. I'm happy to hear anyone else's opinion on this one, because I think it's important. It really is. Is this worth it? Should it be done or not? And of course we have one last problem, which is, even if the Canary Islands decide that it shouldn't be done, and it doesn't happen, here, if Morocco finds oil, it's going to happen anyway. And it's going to happen 10 kilometres that side of an imaginary line running down between the two. So what the Canary Islands have to do if there is oil down there is, I see it as this, it's probably not a good thing, extraction. But we have to do it anyway, because the Canaries have to be in control of their own destinies. We can't just refuse to drill on our side of the line and have the Moroccan government, outside of European Union laws, doing exactly what they're going to do if there is oil down there, which is extracted anyway. So if there's any chance of oil being there, we should probably be getting as much of it out of there as possible, with European Union and high standards of extraction. So yeah, that's how I see it.
Can I just chip in there? Yeah. I think you've started by saying you haven't previously considered some of the complementary services, so that sort of falls outside of what you're saying.
Well, it's interesting because they are separate industries.
I mean, you mentioned something that I was interested certainly with, who's going to control safety. Is it Norwegian know-how, or is it Spanish know-how, or even worse, as far as people here are concerned, is it Moroccan know-how?
They don't, and they find all that way.
Well, I mean, the way I look at it is, I mean, most of I don't know if there are any bad players out there in the oil industry, or if the oil industry actually regulates itself fairly well. I don't know. But of course, the fear is if the Moroccans find it and we don't get it, then what are their standards? Because we're going to be affected just the same as if.
My argument is that it's not. We have to do it.
But I mean, I think also you perhaps overstate the power that the Canarians have to stop whether or not it's going to happen. It's been decided.
This is a big debate. Are Canarian politicians against oil because they're against oil because they don't think it should happen? Or is this money? Normally, is this a money
politicians? They're looking for purchase.
Well, they're looking for that, but they're also considering the money situation. The nightmare scenario is, of course, that a Spanish company comes down, takes all the oil, employs Spanish people, and then all the money and all the oil goes back. We take all the risks. Spain benefits, but we don't. So I kind of hope that Canarian politicians realise this and are hard on it. They're basically saying no, because it's a negotiating tool to make sure that at least some of the money that's made stays here.
I mean, it undoubtedly will come here, though. I mean, I think.
Yeah, because I think you were talking about extraction, but now you see that there's not only extraction; it's creating an infrastructure, oil infrastructure here will bring in extraction will be only a small percentage of the money that will actually come in.
Is there any crossover? There's one question I really wanted to ask. Is there any technology and know-how crossover between extraction and services? There is a lot.
In Stavanger, for instance, most of the companies and the workforce in Stavanger are not working in the oil company itself. They are working in the supporting companies. A lot of these are technological companies which do a lot of research, and so what will happen here is that the rig itself, or the production unit, will facilitate maybe 90 people, and then Repsol will have an office in Las Palmas with another 125
Repsol estimated 5,000 full-time jobs if they strike.
Yeah, the rest of them will be in Madrid, as you said.
Well, no, they said 5,000 jobs here.
It is the same in Norway also. But my company will do a lot of services for them. And as I showed you the picture with the 2 ships, they also have a huge administration, the shipping company. They have all these boats. There will be a huge fleet of these vessels operating to facilitate the exploration. So that's where the jobs come from. So,
Okay.
Are these guys the vanguard of positive PR? Have the oil industry sent these guys?
I must feel good. I'm not scared of it because I was born in 1980, so the rest is history for me. And my experience with the oil and gas industry in Norway is that the country being, organized and taking care of the assets has been very, very good, So I'm not so scared about the industry. I'm more worried about what your politicians are going to do, how they are going to bash their heads together and have regulations, because it's obvious that that's most of the problem.
Well, it's interesting if you compare North Sea, you have Scotland and you have Norway. Norway did some planning, has more money saved away for the future than it could ever have imagined. Scotland, no penny. Norway set up this enormous state aid, this enormous state investment company. Scotland has extracted, I don't know what the percentages are, but they've been taking oil out of the North Sea. They have this Aberdeen centre. They never set up the National Wealth Fund. So Canary Islands perhaps needs to think quite heavily about what they do with the money they get from extraction, because it is a one-off thing, isn't it? It's not something... The services could last for as long as there's oil coming out anywhere in the world. This extraction is going to last, 10, 20, 30 years? That money... That's the important thing, is what do you do with it?
I've got to tell you how thrilling this is for me, because I've got a tourism guide on one side, and I've got some oil on another. Really, I just want to get you guys in a grease pit, see if you can wrestle it off. But I think you're absolutely right. You've identified something really clear there. As communicators, essentially, that's what we do. We're communicators. There's a few of them around. How are we going to play this? Because we have large audiences, and sometimes excessively large audiences. Are we going to play for numbers? Are we going to play for community? What's going to benefit the community? Are we going to play for ecology? Is it a broad spectrum of these things? How do we make sure that our audiences really are going to benefit from something that's going to bring a lot of money?
First thing I'm going to do, which I didn't know until today, is separate out the 2 different things, because there's 2 totally separate things going on here. There's all the publicity's been for the panic of what would happen if our beaches are covered in oil, and then there's a second thing going on, which is bizarrely you can see every day if you live in Las Palmas, and that one I think needs more attention. We should be focusing on that. That's what I would do. The environmental stuff's tricky because for all the standards in the world, there are spills and there are accidents, and it would only take one mistake. And the Canary Islands would lose so much. It's such a scary thing.
There's some good points. He's making good points, and these are the basic arguments coming up. But first, there's no guarantees what you're going to find, and it's almost irrelevant, because an oil company, when they drill a well, they do seismic work, they do a lot of studies, but they know the geology of the area. And they know the probability of there being traffic oil or gas, which may not have happened over the centuries. But they have no idea of knowing actually what's there. They can make a best guess, And so they do exploratory wells to find out. So the estimates, any reserve estimates are completely off the wall because nobody has a clue. Until you actually get some test wells down and do test wells.
You quoted 20% probability. What was your source?
That was in Canaria 7 article. That's basically the level you need to get to before you drill.
Going around the world, I've been in the industry all my life, and not all my life, but I was in mercury before. But the thing is, you hear a lot of figures, but they're completely off the wall because it is exploration. It's a a good term because we don't have a clue. And the thing is that Mauritania, Senegal, Ivory Coast were written off years ago as not being productive, having small reserves and everything. And now they're rethinking that. They're coming back in. One, you're going into deeper waters. You're getting new drilling technologies. You're getting new drilling techniques. Horizontal drilling has come in. It's made things possible. You get more production out of the formation than you did before. There's a whole series of things. Production methods are different. Actual extraction. We're so worried about extraction. Extraction is not the oil, not brought to the surface and pumped onto a ship and it's going to spill all over the place. It's subsea, most of it. Your completion is subsea. You're taken to a central distribution point and take on then tankers come alongside and load up the oil and everything. So your chances for the control are much better. And so you have to see the real picture. And what was mentioned also,
Where do we get this real picture from?
we're drilling in an area that's probability of oil. There's other countries around us, you know? So all these countries have leases mapped out already, and they're trying to interest countries into drilling. Now Morocco is starting, Mauritania is in the startup feed, Senegal is already there, Ivory Coast. All these countries are actually drilling operators which we don't control. There's nothing to say about it. Morocco is going to develop. If there's oil, they're going to develop it. It's the same structure that we're on. So, what are you looking at? I mean, we can control to some degree how the Spanish government regulates the industries. I don't say they're all good boys and they're all 100% reliable, because that's totally not true. You know, I mean, companies cut corners, as happened in the Gulf of Mexico. One comment was made before about the rig. The rig actually was one of the top generation rigs in the world, and the company is probably the best safety record of any company in existence. It's the largest company, and with good equipment. But so many mistakes were made there, just a serious which was regarded upstairs, upper management. So you need control, like Norway.
So the smart strategy then?
Yeah.
The smart strategy is going to be for the Spanish government to establish an infrastructure as quick as possible, bring in as much money as possible, to capitalize on all these rigs going by here, setting things up, despite the fact that there's oil or no oil right off the coast. So get set up, because if they do that, then that strategy will allow them to maybe innovate, come up with money, resources, so that if these guys screw up in Africa, we might be able to step in and help. You know, if we have, you know, some sort of infrastructure here of technology, money, and brains, you know, we can get out there and solve any problems that might come along.
And I think that's where the focus should be. How do you control this? How do you get the capital out of it? How do you make better use of it? One thing for sure, there's a saying, if where you want to be 5 years from now. If you keep doing what you're doing now, you're going to be in the same place you are 5 years from now, you know? Right now, we've got 30% unemployment or more. How much underemployment, how much low employment, you know?
Well, that's
all this thing. So these are issues that are not going away, or they're not being talked about by the drilling sector or whatever. We're in a crisis here. Families don't have income, entire families, you know? So what are you going to do about that, you know? And what are you going to do 5 years from now when you have an opportunity to bring something in? Whether there's oil or not, if you have an infrastructure here, you'll be supplying and servicing West Africa and the African coast, maybe even around to some of the East African drilling for years and years to come. And it's not going down, it's going up. So Aberdeen is a world center. Stavanger are world centers. They don't only work on wells there. They have experts based there that work all over the world, including in the United States. So what are we talking about? What we're talking about is attracting an industry here that can be global. And if there's drilling or if there's not drilling is another question. Is it viable? Is it not viable? Those are other questions. But to attract an industry here that brings income, brings something to the economy here that's seriously lacking now, and change a situation which is not good for anybody. be. I don't know.
Well, that's the big thing at the moment, isn't it? Right now, basically, Gran Canaria's got a big full sign on the tourist beds. We've got tourist spends almost back up to where it was before the recession, before the crisis, and yet we still have 30% unemployment. And they are building more hotels, so there's construction jobs and there'll be jobs, but I can't see how tourism will ever employ everyone who lives here right now. And the population is still growing. We're still getting more and more people moving here. Now, granted, a lot of those are sort of older Norwegians and Germans who are coming to live here. But you're right, it's a huge point.
And it's seasonal business, I guess.
Well, it's not here. It's pretty much 12 months of the year. We have a monopoly in the winter on sunshine, but in the summer, there's lower spend, but it's still high.
I'm studying for years to be an engineer. I don't want to be changing sheets in a hotel, that is my only outlet,
That's fair.
or to have to leave my home and travel someplace else to get a job, which is happening now.
Yeah.
And we have a huge skill base, a huge talent base in Spain, of very talented people, very capable engineers.
This is the most
leave and go elsewhere to get employment.
The most overeducated and
Yes.
population in Europe. Most university degrees have the highest unemployment.
Make use of it and get the economy going. Spain doesn't have a viable economy. It needs help, not just Canary, Spain in general.
We have
We need to change the chip somewhere.
We have another thing about I forgot to mention with the environmental worries. We had it 2 weeks ago. Was it 2.5, 3 weeks ago? A tanker foundered off Morocco in a big storm.
Right.
The single biggest danger to the Canary Islands and to the Wales and to our coastlines isn't from the extraction. It's actually from the sheer number of tankers that pass by here every year. And politicians, it's not been in the debate at all. We've all been focusing on what would happen if one of those wells popped and all this oil came out. But we've actually got dozens of tankers going past every week. And you see them all moored offshore as well.
What's happened with that tanker? What's happened with it? Extracting the oil, it hasn't leaked out.
Yeah. But I mean,
Thousands of tankers go by here.
statistically,
Thousands of tankers go by here every year. This is a major shipping route.
statistically, the danger of an oil spill is from them rather than from
You don't have to
drilling.
have a tanker. It could be a cargo ship that goes by and cleans this tank out on a dark stormy night. Huh?
That used to happen when I was a kid. You used to go to the beach in northern Fuerteventura and you'd come back and there was black souls.
But those didn't come from oil rigs. They came from ships that were cleaning.
That was tanks working.
Okay? So, and they're not major pollution items, but they're flagged as major pollution items, But these things are used to inflame people and to excite people for a political end, and it's not a real end. We're not talking about real data. We're talking about very emotional stuff, But what are we going to do?
I'm pretty sure I can sell loads of newspapers, so I suddenly became the paper.
The Canary Islands, we say the Canary Islands is no longer a shipping route. You have to go around by Brazil. You have to go around. You can't come by here anymore. If you're a tanker,
It is really interesting because before some fool built the Suez Canal, this was the centre of the world. It was. I mean, you think between South America, Europe, and Africa, this was the centre. Now suddenly, it's from this point of view, it's coming back to being the centre of the world.
build double hull tankers. Change your regulatory laws. Governments are greedy. Governments are really incompetent for the job they have. You have people up there that shouldn't be there.
But I mean, we've had the same. We've been working since the '60s here on tourism. So
Right.
I mean, you get people saying tourism's terrible here. It's not. We're full. Hotels are doing very well. But yeah, the knowledge of how to deal with a brand new industry isn't here. I mean, it's not here for the people, for the workers, and it's not here for the politicians. It's difficult to expect them to suddenly know everything when it's never happened before. So.
Well, I mean, but at least if it's a ministry of education, should have some education, or a ministry of mines should know something about mining, or something like this. There should be some relation.
You think so, right?
Preparation.
But you guys can fly in your expertise. The politicians we've got are the ones we're stuck with, and we
I'm
kind
not
of.
asking too much, but decisions are being made at a high level, and they have very little relation to reality or to what's needed or to what our problems and situation is. And really, there's talk about something here that's controllable, it's doable, there's technology. We're simply not doing it because people don't want to spend money, they're too lazy, it's too much trouble or whatever, but it's doable. We have drilling well, swamp. I can't think of a situation other than a fjord maybe that's more ecologically sensitive than swamp. In West Africa, Nigeria is a place that's always brought up. There's horrible things have happened there, spills on land and in the swamps and everything. But a lot's been done to improve that situation and to clean up spills, to clean up areas. Areas are now being farmed. I was on the first project in the swamp there where we actually took up the challenge with the French company, Forex at the time, to drill a zero discharge well using only the equipment we had in hand, not bringing in new technology or science, rocket science or anything else, only what was in hand. And we did it with a couple barges and the rig. We closed everything, recovered everything, recycled everything, and we drilled wells, a series of wells in the swamp with Shell and Forex and zero discharge. So it's possible. I mean, it's not impossible. It's not. We have more than enough technology in hand and everything, but we're not using it.
Can we trust the politicians? That's the big
No,
thing.
absolutely not. I mean,
Who do we trust?
Trust the politicians.
No, it's up to us.
That's amazing.
To inform people, up to you, to inform people and do so accurately, not just to sell the paper, but to actually give accurate information out there. And it's up to us to insist that politicians act on it.
Protectionists never finish, and existentialists go further. It's my fault, now let's get on.
Well, I mean, from the Canaries' point of view, a few years ago you had NATO testing here, and they were testing was it ultrasonic frequencies? They were testing their radar.
Yeah,
they
maneuvers,
yeah, they all came down here, and they promised that nothing would go wrong, and everything was fine. It was perfectly safe for whales, and they fired these huge, great big depth charges, testing their sonar, and 3 weeks later, dozens of rare beaked whales washed up on the beach with bleeding ears. So it's quite difficult to explain. You can't just say, oh, you can trust us, because you can't trust NATO.
You can't trust them. You have to.
Well, this wasn't politics, but I mean, the Canary Islands, they're looking out. We're a small place in the middle of the ocean. Okay. And you're looking out at this and thinking, and the Canarians, the people are thinking, well, we can't trust outsiders, especially not big business. Look what NATO did just less than 10 years ago. They killed these
warships for years. Warships dropping explosive devices down there can't be good for the fish or whales or anything else.
No, but we don't want them.
I hope nobody ever believed that, And these major military sonar devices are amplified many times over what we used on ships and everything.
But I mean,
there's strong regulations for that.
Sonar devices and
I have to work with
fish
them.
using sonar devices, and all these dolphins and whales receive these signals and they get off track, so it has an effect. But
well, hang on, this is my job, right? Right, okay. What I've been looking to getting into is we employ someone to stand on the bridge of the boat, and they have to look for marine mammals, whales, and sometimes acoustically as well. And then there's a set of regulations, which means that you can't just fire up all your seismic guns. This is when you're surveying, mapping the seabed. Yeah, maybe you're looking for, or maybe you want to know in detail the soil. They say you're going to put a rig in, or whatever. Then you can't just fire up all your guns. You have to slowly increase the power of this acoustic impact. And basically, surveying, it does impact these whales, citations and etc. Whatever.
I mean, beaked whales, which is the big one around here.
Yeah,
I've never seen one. You see them when they wash up on the beaches. So, but I'm not saying that the sonar of the oil. But what I'm saying
this is a big subject.
It's the idea of the Canary Islands looking out and being told that they have to trust people.
Yeah,
and you have examples, and they don't. The Canary Islands, they're deeply suspicious because they've got this huge industry that works.
Yeah.
And everything else that could affect that is
when I work in Senegal, which is not far from here, there's no rules. Boom. If we want, we can just put the guns on full whack. There's no real regulation as far as I know. Compare that to Norway, super strict, everything. Obviously, New Zealand as well. The UK is completely different. What does Spain have? What's it going to be like here? Do they have any regulation, or is it going to be a strict rule, or is it going to be something a bit more soft where they tax accordingly, or is it,
I mean, they haven't got. I don't know.
But I know what the Canaries are like, and then what Spain are like. It just sounds like the government bunch of idiots.
Oh, well, I work for them, so I can. No, I think that's a bit of an unfair assessment. There's a lot of suspicion about the government from people, but I'm not sure that they're all idiots.
Well, there's something I don't understand is why consistently is the experience in Aberdeen and Norway is written off completely by people arguing the ecological side of this argument
because for every
why
Aberdeen,
is that written off?
because for every Aberdeen and every other town that's successful in the public eye, you have an Exxon Valdez and you have a Gulf of Mexico situation, and when you read about them, that's what people read, that's what people see in the papers. It's a perception thing.
But the Gulf of Mexico,
Papers are the problem.
you've been operating there for how many years?
Well,
And in that time, how many plane crashes, how many train crashes, how many other things have happened? This is a huge industrial accident that shouldn't have happened, and it's largely because the government's not doing their job, the regulatory bodies are not doing their job, and the company management wasn't doing his job on regulating themselves, you know? So this is what I say, you need regulation, but you need to do objections and people trying to protect the environment should do it productively, not just...
no, I agree with that. I think I agree that the instinct is always to say no, and you know, people, we have to live here too. So yeah,
you'll get more results.
yeah.
No, at the moment, it seems like the Canarians are, I don't know, like my father told me not to do, put all the eggs in one basket, you know, kind of, because tourism, if you look at tourism here in the island today, you have a lot of competition in tourism as well. If I go to Dubai, for instance, or any other place which is coming up in Croatia or these kind of places, I find fantastic hotels, fantastic beaches, everything. If I go to Playa del Inglés, I find old hotels, a lot of worn down properties, and not a lot of, so I'm thinking in the next 10 years, where's tourism in this island going to be?
Well, we have one benefit, which is we have in Europe short haul between less than 6 hours flight. We have a 6-month monopoly on sunshine. That protects. But the problem is, of course,
the investment that hasn't been happening is now happening actually this year. There's a lot of stuff, but it's a valid argument.
Yeah, no, it is definitely a valid
I'm
argument.
saying if you want to attract, what's the volume, potential volume in the future is to get all the tourists here, because in this moment there is 30% unemployment.
Yes.
And you should have more sustainable industries, or
yeah, no, I agree entirely.
And as he said, if you want to be an engineer and you're born in Las Palmas, if you want to be a subsea engineer or something, well, you have to move. The only thing you can do here is related to the tourism. So it's important, I think, and the communication is also important. That it is possible to do exploration and do all of this with, to have it integrated with the rest of the society without any problems.
So it's one thing people forget here is that they come here and they look at it and they think Playa del Inglés is looking a bit old, and parts of it they are. In Greece, you have 6-month tourist season, and then you have 6 months to repaint, put everything back. Here, it's 12 months, and what do you do? How do you close a hotel down for a month when it's 80% booked to fix it? And this is the big dilemma in the south, is it's so successful that it's not been renewed. And you can't even, wouldn't it be nice if Avenida Tirajana, the big road down the middle of Playa del Inglés, was pedestrianised, cafes, street bars? It would be fantastic, but...
There's a big project very similar to that going on in Playa del Inglés right now.
Yeah, but how do you disrupt this whole resort with 300,000 people?
Yeah, I think
it's so difficult. It's a problem they've never solved.
I think more than anything, what we all have to do, if we plan to be residents here in 5 or 10 or 20 of our children here, we need to think about what really is, how the world is really structured. Now, how the world is really structured, to my mind, is that governments have a tendency to try to find businesses that are exploiting opportunities so that they can find their revenues, so that they can essentially... I'd like to think that there's a large proportion of politicians who really are in politics for the right reasons. And I like to think that the worst way to stop a group of politicians from doing what you don't want to do is to just openly oppose them and call for revolution. The fact is, I think you need to work with people. You need to work with people in power structures. You need to work with people in big business. You need to find the way to find the best benefit, the best way of going forward. And so from the environmental perspective, I see this often. I've been involved in other types of rights campaign organisations. There's often, it brings big headlines, but a lot of people who want to say, no, this is wrong, we must oppose it, call them out on the streets, instead of saying, well, what really is happening here? How can we ensure that what is happening really benefits the most people?
Yeah.
And I think that, more than anything for me, is the game, is how do you get people working together and really understanding that, I mean, for instance, it's a bit of a revelation for me, this ironic idea that I only voiced for the first time here, is that the oil industry, if played right by the tourism and the ecology side of the debate, if played right, the oil industry might well say, we're going to pump a load of money into making sure a biosphere reserve is properly protected, that tourism infrastructure is properly renewed, that we keep these beaches safe. So it's a difficulty, but that's about working together. It's man on man.
That's what I'm clinging to, the idea that Canarian politicians are being where they are because they've got a plan.
No, fair
It's not. I don't know. But it would be nice.
You know, in the 60s or early 70s, Las Palmas was a center for oil field families. When I'm working in West Africa, so we had our families based here.
I remember very well.
The American
first train was here.
The English school got bigger, and then they put another school in.
Well, there's already an American school here.
And German school, all these things came up, and this is an industry that was thousands and thousands of miles away, but had families living here, bringing a huge amount into the economy.
I remember when I was a child, there was an American guy here driving a Rolls Royce around the island.
You remember?
And he was a great friend of my parents. He was fantastic.
But, you know, down around the Las Canaria beach and everything, the bars were all full, the restaurants were all full, the nightclubs were full, huge. Huh? And the business wasn't here, it was thousands of miles away. Huh? And this is the kind of thing that we've ignored. It was here in the 60s, it disappeared, and nobody tried to do anything.
So why did it disappear? What happened? Did they move somewhere else?
The price of oil went down.
And then, okay.
It bottomed out. So exploration dropped. Oil companies centered their efforts in places like Nigeria where certain services were available. It was more workable at the time. The geopolitical situation was much better. There wasn't so much danger. They brought families living there under a lot of risk, but they brought them there. You know, more disease, more everything.
Basically, the same reasons that it's hard to make money out of a local bar in Puerto Rico.
With danger and instability.
No, basically, big business makes decisions, and then this is another thing that we haven't looked at. You know, the fact is, we're all facing up to an idea that many people haven't really discussed. That is that a hell of a lot of money in infrastructure and business and support services could arrive here almost overnight.
That'd be great, yeah.
What could also happen, not too far beyond them, is they could disappear as quickly as they came. And so I suppose that's where part of your argument is it worth it? Personally, I think we can't gamble on that.
Well,
the fact is, they've already made that decision for us. Now we're going to say is, how can we limit damage? How can we ensure that we're involved in the decision-making process? How do we not get ourselves cut out and seen as the other side of the argument?
Well, my argument about the extraction is, let's find out what's down there, and then we'll decide what to do with it. Because at the moment, the Canaries are behind Morocco and actually exploring. And Repsol's just started. So let's sink a few tests. Just find out, and then.
Impossible. Because the minute you send an oil rig to a drilling rig at the rate of $400,000 or $500,000 per day, drill a hole, if it finds something, the decision is already made.
It's going to come out, yeah?
Yeah.
Okay.
So that's the decision. Once the rig leaves the port and the drill bit starts spinning, it's.
I'd like to think I had more influence than I do, but
we had this slightly ludicrous situation a few months ago where the Cairn Energy rig that was exploring on the Moroccan side of the line came in here to supply before floating over to the Moroccan side, and that kind of, to me, said it. It's happening.
Look at what's happening now. Our port's doubling in size. When I came here, it was a tiny port. You have Muelle Santa Catalina with a couple little slipways there for fishing boats and very little else. Muelle Grande was the biggest thing we had, you know? It's just, you know, it's a megaport now, and it's doubling in size.
Here's a question, Here's a question.
And for example, our company, Zanacona, you know, people like hotels and everything, are investing already. We're not waiting. We're expanding services. We're able to repair big thrusters that the rigs have that are the size of some vessels. We're able to do things that we couldn't do before and offer services. And the thing is that we could care less if there's production or not production. What we're trying to do is get the port services up to where these rigs and these vessels are attracted for repair, which is our business.
Yeah, that's the fascinating thing.
We provide the services, and this is going to help the local economy. We're not an oil company. We're a ship repair company, basically. You know, so this how do we provide those services? And because we're doing that now we're seeing the major fishing fleets coming back this way with new agreements. We're seeing other things happening that we can provide services to those sectors as well. So it's not money lost, it's money well invested. And the thing is, we're not betting on whether there's production or not. Somebody else is going to make that money, not us.
Can I ask one cheeky question? Why did you both choose Gran Canaria and not Tenerife? This will get me in trouble all over the place.
Well, very, very good question. Tenerife is very receptive for this sort of thing, and they've tried to attract and everything, but Tenerife is a huge peak sticking out of the ocean with a little fringe around it with very little space. So it's just logistics, you know.
Okay.
Here you have a deep water port. You have more area available. You have some options open. Not that Tenerife won't benefit. It probably will if they play their work cards smart. And you could obviously repair 2 or 3 rigs a year, 4 rigs a year in there, and bring a lot into the economy. You know. So if it picks up the way it should pick up here, the way companies are saying it will pick up here, I'm talking about the major operating companies, then this port will be overtaxed, you know, so...
spillover, basically.
Yeah, so if there's something in Tenerife, of course, it could be there, you know, and maybe 2 rigs at a time, but during the year, you could do 6, 8 rigs a year, quite possibly, and it could be done. So the benefits could be more than here, you know, it's not, this is just the main port, and, you know, people on this island should be looking at this economy, you know, this is, it's a large number of people, it's a large number of families without work, or at low income levels, so this is where the urgent need is, you know.
Just 2 things, right?
Oh, sorry, can I have the word? I think there's even one more aspect that you haven't covered yet, worth mentioning. Even if we assume that there is nothing to extract or too little to extract, or it's too complicated or something, there is still the issue that Gran Canaria could still benefit from receiving all those big platforms and repair them, since they will be passing through anyway, even if there is no oil down there.
Absolutely. Yeah, you don't need the rigs to come here. Remember, if you have 300, 350 rigs operating in West Africa, with the political situation, the security situation, what it is, and consider the weather, I mean, your corrosion problems are huge there. I mean, just major. So they can store major equipment here and send supply vessels in and out. They can send the drill pipe here for inspection and refurbishment. The marine risers to connect the rig to the ocean floor.
Don't need the extraction to attract.
Yeah?
Don't you need the extraction to kickstart industry?
No, we're even leaving extractions completely aside. You know, I mean,
And then you have a totally grease-free, then you have...
How to kickstart it without using extraction. Because extraction has such a negative connotation.
Yeah, it's a shame that they've happened at the same time.
So you can actually have, with this model you can actually have, could I just finish my argument? With this model you could actually have a non-environmental risky business model, because you can still treat all the rigs and earn money from them, even without extracting what's down there, what may be down there.
Yeah. That's the big thing I've learned today, is that there's two totally separate developments going on at the same time, and I don't think people realise that.
So my only real questions then are, is English language the primary language that you guys speak on the rigs?
Yeah.
Good. So will you help me produce an entertaining, delightful little publication for oil rig workers and their support services? That's my first question. Second, how do I get one of the parties that you just did?
Very good.
That was my answer to why I'm in Las Palmas, not Tenerife. Some guy told me that women here are more pretty.
Really?
So I chose this out.
We also have a long history of cross-dressing. Be careful.
Okay, guys, should we carry on outside?
All right.
Nice
I think
and
that's
stuff,
what wraps it all up. Thanks, Alex. Great stuff. Great. Thanks for a great day. Great session, this whole thing. That wraps up today. And thanks, everybody. Safe home. Go outside, have a beer, and they'll keep chatting. There's some coffees and water. Thanks.